All right, so I'm using the type tools. I'm separating them out into different text layers, type layers. And that way, sometimes I'll do it letter by letter. I can use transform while they're still in the type tool, still vector shapes, and really set them in to where I want. So there's the M, and it's still a type tool. So if I double click it, it will select it all. And then if I want to isolate the M, just like a word processor, I can click on it, I can hold down Shift, select different ones. Now this Y, I want it to be a little bit bigger. Let's try, see, 1200 pixels. Right. But I want the Y to drop down a little bit. I want it to be reversed. So instead of trying to keep it with the M, I'm going to delete it. And then I am going to make a new type layer and then paste it in and then move it on its own. Okay, now I can try different things like Option Command T, and I'm going to try flipping it horizontally. And that's still a type layer, even though now it's reversed. And I'll try growing it. And I'll try skewing it. Which allows me to shift its kind of angles in italics and rotating it. And I'm just not quite getting the personality I want from it, but let's keep trying. Option Command T to try to keep it as a type tool. Because my next option is to rasterize it and then just treat it like pixels. But then I lose the sharpness, right? But that's pretty close. Okay, now let me take that M again, duplicate it, move it up, and then turn it into an F. Because as long as it's a type tool, it's editable, right? And then Option Command T, to grow it, to fit it into place. Option Command T to skew it. Come on. Let me save. And let me Option Command T. Not letting me do what I want to be able to do to it. Option Command T. There we go. Skew it. There, I want to lean it a little bit that way. And shrink it a little bit. Oh, I needed to Option Command T, scale it while holding down Shift. There's something like that. Maybe rotate it a little. And then maybe skew it a little bit more. Move it back. Stretch it up. So lots of different just patient uses. Very much like what we did when we did our emoji vector shape designs in Photopea. Okay. Now for the A, or for fault, I might copy the not, then move that above, move that down, rotate it a little bit with free transform, hit return, then double click, and then change the letters. Right. And this is where I can choose something, which is interesting in design. Do I want it to be more readable like this, where it's either going to be on top of my spot illustration or behind my spot illustration? My spot illustration is here, and I can move that folder all the way up, right? And I still think that's really readable. Or do I want to follow my sketch and actually think this is more readable, but I want to stretch it so I can get to the T on the other end? So just like any good workflow, you want to play with it and know your options, and you want to keep improving it at each step. You're not stuck with whatever you decided last. Now I like the L that way for sure. And squeeze it a little bit shorter. But I don't like the A and the U that way. So what do? I select it, and I just take the A and the U out of it and put spaces in. And then I can just stretch. Once it processes and it's just an L, I can stretch it on its own. Like that. And then maybe I take it, duplicate it, make it an A, and then transform that. So I'm really modifying this typeface, even flipping it horizontally and skewing it. And rotating it, and shrinking it, stretching it, all to fit the goals of my text blocking sketch. And this is just a different way of using the type tool and all those vector shapes from all those different typefaces, like we used the type design tool when we did our emojis, or the vector shapes tool when we did our emojis. So now I have the U, so I'm going to take that A and duplicate it, change it to a U, and then free transform it, which in many ways is an easier way to play with the point size than actually adjusting the dimensions there, to play with the italics. And it's all stuff that you could do with pixels as well if you rasterized it, but the problem is if you rasterized it first, you would lose the crisp definition. So that's the good option of these vector layers. So not my fault. That's all pretty readable. I might take this F and just decrease the kerning, the space between the A and the F, by playing with the skew. And I actually like Photopea quite a bit for typesetting. So it's text blocking or type blocking when you are figuring out the amount of space you want your copy or your type to take in the poster. And then this step is what's called typesetting, when you're actually figuring out the individual space and placement between your letters. And type designers get pretty specific about their vocabulary, right? That's why they prefer typeface to font, because a font is a variation on a typeface. Okay, now I'm going to take that F, I'm going to duplicate it, Command J, and then turn it to a T. And I'm using all capitals just to help readability. If you have a lot of text, you can use the lowercase. And for those not in my art history, prehistory to Renaissance class or medieval class, the lowercase English alphabet or Latin alphabet that we use was designed after the year 800 by Charlemagne. It's called Carolingian minuscule. But it was made so that they could fit more words on a page for their illuminated gospels. So sometimes you need to use lowercase, but lowercase is never as readable as uppercase. It's why most comic book lettering is all uppercase. Yes, question? Sure. All right, let me skew this, and then I'll save the work, and then I'll come around and help. All right, so this is working. And like with my T, you'll notice that there's little differences in its points. And because I'm not in a vector program, even though this is a vector typeface, I can't control it to the extent where I can move the anchor points. I can free transform it, I can transform it, but I can only do skew, rotate, and scale. I can't even warp it, right? So there are times when you might want to do hand lettering, and I'll show you that with a new layer. And if I want really rigid points, but really want to be able to control everywhere they go, instead of using my brush tool, I can use the polygonal lasso, right? So this is underneath the regular lasso tool, and it's a lot like a vector pen tool in vector.com, where I can click and just move, click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move, click, move. And if I double click, it's a little temperamental, you'll see that it adds, it connects itself. It has to close the path. And then I would say edit fill with black. So this is a raster layer. If I want to add to it, I can simply go to the polygonal lasso tool again, deselect, and then click somewhere, move and click, and then I've got to connect it all, and then fill that with black. So for modern typefaces, right, with no serifs or very little curves, obviously the polygonal lasso wouldn't do well on the bottom of that U. That's where you can get your type design. So the difference between that and this, right? Same thing with my I, and with my F, I might try an alternate F, where I just add my own layer, and then I use the polygonal lasso tool to hit the points of the F I sketched. So definitely feel free to make your own type. Either using your brush tool like we did for digital inking, or using the polygonal lasso to really control the lines. And then I'm now thinking that I can replace this Y, but I need to create a new pixel-based layer because I want it to have a little bit more of this personality to it, like my sketch. So just like we did for our spot illustrations, don't ignore